Hashtag the Galactic Council's greatest mistake. The massive crystal dome of the Galactic Council chamber buzzed with tension. Representatives from 12 major species sat around the circular platform, their various forms creating a bizarre rainbow of alien life. At the center stood Ambassador Sarah Chun, the last human to speak before the council in what would become known as the darkest day in galactic history. "You cannot be serious about this decision," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what was happening. Her brown eyes swept across the assembled aliens, searching for any sign of reason or compassion. High Chancellor Vextar of the Threnodai Empire raised his forearms, each ending in sharp claws that gleamed under the chamber's artificial light. His insect-like face showed no emotion as he spoke in his buzzing voice. "The decision is final, human. Your species has proven too dangerous, too unpredictable. The peace of the galaxy demands your removal." Sarah felt her heart sink, but she kept her composure. Behind her stood Captain Marcus Rodriguez and Dr. Elena Vasquez, the only other humans present at this historic moment. They had come here hoping to negotiate, to find a peaceful solution to the growing tensions between humanity and the other galactic civilizations. "What exactly are our crimes?" Sarah asked, stepping closer to the central platform. "We've followed every galactic law. We've contributed to scientific advancement. We've helped solve conflicts between other species." Counselor Zephyria of the Crystalline Collective spoke next, her voice like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Her translucent blue form shimmered as she moved. "Your contributions are acknowledged, Ambassador Chun. But your species' capacity for violence and chaos far outweighs any benefits you bring." "Violence." Captain Rodriguez stepped forward, his military bearing evident even in his diplomatic uniform. "We fought only when attacked or when defending innocent lives. Every military action we've taken has been justified and measured." The Aquarian representative, Tidesinger Merrill, spoke from her water-filled chamber. Her words bubbled up through a translation device. "Justified by your standards, perhaps. But you humans have a saying. The road to hell is paved with good intentions. Your good intentions have led to the destruction of entire star systems." Dr. Vasquez, humanity's chief xenobiologist, couldn't remain silent any longer. "Those were defensive actions. When the Vortak launched their invasion fleet toward Earth, we had no choice but to stop them. The 3 systems that were damaged were acceptable losses compared to the genocide they planned." "Acceptable losses," repeated Chancellor Vextar, his mandibles clicking in what might have been disgust. "This is exactly why humanity cannot remain in civilized space. You speak of genocide while justifying the deaths of billions as acceptable." Sarah raised her hand, trying to regain control of the situation. "The Vortak invasion was 3 years ago. Since then, we've worked tirelessly to establish peaceful relations. We've shared our medical technology, our agricultural techniques, our scientific discoveries. Surely that counts for something." The ethereal representative, a being of pure energy contained within a glowing sphere, pulsed with different colors as it spoke through a mechanical voice. "Your medical technology has indeed been revolutionary. Your agricultural methods have ended famine on dozens of worlds. Your scientists have made breakthroughs that eluded us for centuries. This makes your potential for destruction even more terrifying. You fear us because we're effective?" Sarah asked, incredulous. "You're punishing success?" "We fear you because you're unpredictable," said Counselor Thane of the reptilian hegemony, his forked tongue flicking out as he spoke. "Every other species in this galaxy has found their place in the natural order. We have our roles, our limitations, our purposes. Humans refuse to accept any boundaries." Dr. Vasquez shook her head. "Refusing to accept limitations isn't a crime. It's called progress. It's called chaos," Vextar buzzed. "In the 50 years since first contact, humans have disrupted established trade routes, revolutionized 12 different scientific fields, ended 4 major wars, started 2 minor ones, saved 6 species from extinction, accidentally created 3 new forms of artificial life, and somehow managed to make peace between the Mollusk Federation and the Silicon Brotherhood, enemies for over 1,000 years. And this is bad because..." Captain Rodriguez asked. "Because it's impossible," shouted Counselor Brasswind of the Mechanical Confederacy, his robotic voice crackling with static. No single species should be capable of such widespread change in such a short time. Your unpredictability makes long-term planning impossible. How can we maintain galactic stability when humans might completely reshape the political landscape at any moment? Sarah felt the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. She looked around the chamber one more time, seeing fear disguised as righteousness in every alien face. So you're exiling us because we make you uncomfortable? We're exiling you because you're dangerous, Vextar said firmly. Not because you're evil. We acknowledge that your intentions are generally good. But good intentions paired with unlimited ambition and remarkable capability create an unstable element in our carefully balanced civilization. Where are we supposed to go? Dr. Vasquez asked quietly. Tidesinger Merrill's bubbling voice carried a note of what might have been sympathy. The Outer Rim territories beyond our borders. There are suitable worlds there, unexplored systems. You can build whatever kind of civilization you want, far from ours. And if we refuse? Captain Rodriguez asked, his hand unconsciously moving toward where his sidearm would normally rest. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop several degrees. Counselor Zephyria's crystalline form darkened slightly. Then, you will be removed by force. The combined fleets of the Galactic Council are already positioned around all human-controlled systems. This is not a negotiation, Ambassador Chun. This is a notification. Sarah felt something cold and hard settle in her stomach. You're making the biggest mistake in galactic history. Perhaps, admitted the ethereal representative, its glow dimming. But it's a mistake we can live with. We cannot say the same about allowing humanity to remain. The vote was formal but unnecessary. 12-0, with humanity's own vote invalidated due to conflict of interest. The Exiled decree was signed that day, giving humanity exactly one galactic standard year to remove all human presence from Council space. As they left the chamber, Dr. Vasquez whispered to her companions, "They have no idea what they've just done." Sarah nodded grimly. They're afraid of what we might become if left unchecked. They're about to find out what we become when we have no choice but to check ourselves. The exodus began within days. Human colonies throughout Council space received the devastating news through official diplomatic channels. Panic spread quickly, followed by anger. Then, by something the aliens hadn't expected, determination. On New Terra, the most established human colony outside Earth, Governor James Walsh addressed his citizens through the colony's communication network. The square in front of the government building was packed with people, their faces showing a mixture of fear and defiance. "My fellow humans," Walsh began, his weathered face serious but calm. "We have been asked to leave our homes because other species fear our potential. They see our achievements and worry about what we might do next. They have decided that it's safer to remove us entirely than to work with us as equals." A voice from the crowd shouted, "What are we going to do?" Walsh smiled grimly. "We're going to prove them right to fear us. Not because we're going to hurt them, but because we're going to become something they never imagined possible." The evacuation proceeded with typical human efficiency. Ships that had been designed for exploration and trade were rapidly converted for mass transport. Entire cities were disassembled and packed for transport to new worlds beyond the galactic frontier. Dr. Vasquez worked around the clock with teams of xenobiologists and terraforming specialists, identifying suitable worlds in the unexplored regions. "We need planets that can support Earth-type life," she told her team during one of their daily briefings. "But we also need to think bigger. We've learned so much from our time with the other species. We can create something better than what we're leaving behind." Captain Rodriguez, now promoted to admiral for the evacuation efforts, coordinated with the other military leaders to ensure the safety of the massive convoy of ships carrying humanity into exile. "The Council wants us gone," he told his officers, "but they also want to make sure we don't come back with revenge on our minds. They're going to be watching us very carefully during the transition." "Good," replied Captain Lisa Park, one of his most trusted commanders. "Let them watch. Let them see how humans really respond to adversity." The scientific community was perhaps the most excited about the exile, despite the obvious hardships it would bring. Dr. Michael Chun, Sarah's younger brother and a quantum physicist, gathered his research teams to discuss their plans. "Think about it," he said, pacing excitedly in front of a holographic star map. "We've always been limited by council regulations. No research into dangerous technologies. No experiments that might upset the galactic balance. No pushing boundaries that make other species uncomfortable." His colleague, Dr. Rebecca Stone, nodded enthusiastically. "The antimatter experiments alone could advance our space travel capabilities by centuries. And, without the Council's Ethical Oversight Committee breathing down our necks, we can finally pursue some of the more controversial research projects." "Careful," warned Dr. James Liu, the senior physicist on the team. "The Council is exiling us because they think we're dangerous. Let's not prove them right by actually becoming dangerous." Dr. Chen laughed. "Jim, we're already dangerous. That's why they want us gone. The question is whether we become dangerous to them specifically, or just dangerous to the old way of doing things." On Earth, the evacuation was proceeding smoothly despite the massive scale of the operation. President Maria Santos addressed the United Nations one last time before the planet was evacuated. "We leave Earth not in defeat, but in anticipation," she said, her voice carrying across every communication channel in human space. "For 4 centuries, we've dreamed of the stars. For 50 years, we've lived among them as junior partners, always careful not to upset our alien neighbors. Today, we begin our journey as masters of our own destiny." The response from the galactic community was mixed. Many individuals from other species expressed sympathy for humanity's plight, even if they understood their government's decision. Underground networks formed to help humans transport some of their more valuable research and cultural artifacts. Zendara, a young Threnodai scientist, met secretly with Dr. Vasquez on a space station near the edge of Council space. "I don't agree with what my government is doing," she buzzed quietly, looking around nervously. "Your research into biointegration technology could revolutionize medicine for all species." Dr. Vasquez handed over a data crystal containing decades of research. "Then, make sure it doesn't disappear with us. Science belongs to everyone, not just humans." Similar scenes played out across the galaxy as sympathetic aliens helped preserve human knowledge and accomplishments. Not everyone supported the exile, but those who opposed it were too few and too quiet to make a difference. The last human ship left Council space exactly 1 year after the exile decree was signed. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood on the bridge of the colony ship New Horizons, watching the edge of known space disappear behind them. Beside her, Admiral Rodriguez monitored the long-range sensors for any signs of Council ships following them. "Clean break," he reported. "They're really letting us go without escort." "Why would they escort us?" Dr. Vasquez asked from her station. "They think we're beaten, exiled, removed from their perfect little galaxy." Sarah smiled for the first time in months. "They have no idea that they just gave us the greatest gift in human history." "What's that?" asked Captain Park. "Freedom," Sarah replied, looking ahead toward the unexplored regions of space where humanity would make its new home. "Complete, unlimited freedom to become whatever we choose to become." The convoy of human ships pushed deeper into uncharted space, their sensors and probes searching for suitable worlds. Behind them, the Galactic Council congratulated itself on solving the human problem with minimal bloodshed. Ahead of them lay the unknown, and, for humanity, the unknown had always been an invitation rather than a threat. In the depths of space, far from the regulated peace of Council civilization, humanity began to change in ways that no one, not even humans themselves, could have predicted. The exile that was meant to contain their dangerous potential had instead unleashed it completely. The galaxy would not remain ignorant of this fact for long. As the months passed, the human convoy established temporary bases on asteroids and small moons, using them as stepping stones deeper into the frontier. Dr. Chen's physics teams worked around the clock, developing new faster-than-light drive systems that made the Council's transportation technology look primitive. "We're not bound by their safety regulations anymore," Dr. Chen explained to Admiral Rodriguez during one of their progress briefings. "The quantum tunnel drives we're developing could cut travel time between systems by 90%. "Are they safe?" Rodriguez asked. Dr. Chen grinned. "Define safe. They won't blow up the ship or kill the crew. Beyond that, were in uncharted territory. Dr. Vasquez's terraforming teams were making equally impressive progress. "We've identified 17 potentially habitable worlds in our target region," she reported. "But, more importantly, we've developed atmospheric processors that can make marginal worlds not just habitable, but better than Earth normal." "Better how?" Sarah asked. "Higher oxygen content, optimized atmospheric pressure, enhanced mineral distribution in the soil. We're not just looking for places to survive, we're creating places to thrive." The most remarkable developments were happening among the civilian population. Cut off from the familiar entertainment and social structures of council space, humans began creating new forms of art, new social organizations, and new ways of thinking about their place in the universe. Maya Patel, a cultural anthropologist, documented these changes in her daily logs. "People are reinventing themselves," she wrote. "Without the pressure to conform to galactic norms, we're seeing innovations in every aspect of human culture. New music that incorporates alien mathematical concepts we learned in council space. New literature that explores themes impossible under council censorship. New social structures that blend the best of human tradition with possibilities we never had the freedom to explore." The children born during the Exodus were already showing signs of being different from their parents. Growing up in the vast emptiness between stars, with no world to call home, they thought about space and time in ways that puzzled their elders. 10-year-old Alex Chun, Dr. Chen's son, asked his father during one of their weekly science lessons, "Dad, why do the council species think in straight lines?" "What do you mean?" "They build their cities in grids. They organize their governments in hierarchies. They think about time as past, present, future. Everything is linear. But space isn't linear. Why don't they think in curves and spirals and loops like the universe actually works?" Dr. Chin stared at his son, realizing that the boy was asking questions that had never occurred to adult humans, even after decades of space travel. "I don't know, Alex. Why do you think they do that?" "Maybe because they evolved on planets," Alex said thoughtfully. "Gravity makes everything fall down, so they think in terms of up and down, better and worse, before and after. But we're growing up in space. Maybe we'll think different." That night, Dr. Chun called an emergency meeting of the senior staff. "I think we need to start preparing for the possibility that our children are going to be fundamentally different from us." "Different how?" Sarah asked. "Different in ways we can't even imagine yet. They're growing up without the limitations that shaped every previous human generation. No gravity, no fixed home, no alien governments telling them what they can and can't do. They're going to think about the universe in ways that no species in galactic history has ever thought about it." Admiral Rodriguez frowned. "Is that good or bad?" "I don't know," Dr. Chin admitted. "But I think it's exactly what the Council was afraid of." 25 years had passed since humanity's exile from Council space. The frontier region that had once been considered barren wasteland now hummed with activity across dozens of star systems. What the humans had built in their isolation defied every prediction the Galactic Council had made about their fate. The first sign that something extraordinary was happening came from long-range sensors operated by the Threnodai Empire's border patrol. Captain Zixtal was conducting a routine survey of the neutral zone when his instruments detected something impossible. "Computer, run diagnostics on all sensor arrays." He buzzed into his command console. The readings couldn't be correct. According to his instruments, there was a structure in the void between star systems that measured over 50 kilometers in length and was moving at speeds that should have torn any known material apart. Diagnostics complete. All systems functioning within normal parameters. The ship's AI responded in the clicking language of the Threnodai. Zixtal's mandibles clicked nervously as he opened a communication channel to his superiors. "Border Command, this is Patrol Vessel 779. I'm detecting artificial structures in the Forbidden Zone. Multiple contacts, unprecedented size, and speed." The response from Border Command was immediate. 779, you are ordered to maintain distance and observe only. Do not attempt contact or approach. Transmit all sensor data immediately. As Captain Zixtal watched through his ship's long-range viewers, massive structures moved through space with impossible grace. Ships that looked like they had been grown rather than built, their organic curves flowing through space like living creatures. And there were so many of them, hundreds, maybe thousands of vessels moving in perfect coordination. The sensor data reached the highest levels of the Galactic Council within hours. In the crystal chamber where humanity had been exiled decades earlier, the same species representatives gathered in emergency session. But the chamber itself had changed, additional screens and monitoring equipment now ringed the space, and the representatives looked older, wearier. High Chancellor Vextar, now ancient by Threnodai standards, studied the holographic displays with growing alarm. How many ships are we looking at? Counselor Zephyria's crystalline form had grown more complex over the years, additional facets reflecting light in strange patterns. Our estimates range from 1,500 to 3,000 vessels. The energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. 3,000 ships, repeated Counselor Thane, his reptilian features now marked with age spots. Where did exiled humans find the resources to build such a fleet? The ethereal representative, its energy patterns now more chaotic and rapid than before, pulsed with urgent colors. More concerning is their technology. These ships are moving at velocities our fastest vessels cannot match. Their energy outputs suggest power sources we do not understand. Admiral Brasswind of the Mechanical Confederacy, his robotic form upgraded several times over the decades, processed the data with cold logic. Analysis suggests these are not simply modified versions of known technology. These appear to be entirely new paradigms of engineering. Tidesinger Merrill, speaking from her updated water chamber, bubbled with worry. We should have monitored them more closely. 25 years of complete isolation was perhaps too long. Monitored them how? Vextar asked sharply. They were exiled beyond our borders specifically so we wouldn't have to deal with them. The entire point was to let them become someone else's problem. It appears, said the ethereal representative, that they have indeed become someone else's problem. The question is whose? The debate was interrupted when the chamber's communication system activated. The main display showed a face that many of the older representatives remembered, Admiral Marcus Rodriguez, now clearly in his 70s but still carrying the bearing of a military commander. Greetings, Galactic Council, Rodriguez said, his image transmitted across the impossible distance between the frontier and Council space. I apologize for the unannounced contact, but we have important matters to discuss. The chamber fell silent. The humans weren't supposed to be capable of transmitting across such distances. The communication technology alone represented advances that should have taken centuries to develop. Vextar was the first to recover from his shock. Admiral Rodriguez, you are transmitting from beyond our borders, in violation of your exile agreement. Actually, Rodriguez smiled, we're transmitting from inside your borders. Approximately 3 light years inside, to be precise. Panic spread through the chamber. Counselor Thane's forked tongue flicked rapidly as he spoke. Impossible. Our sensor networks would have detected any approach. Your sensor networks are looking for the kind of technology you understand, Rodriguez replied calmly. We've developed somewhat different approaches to space travel. Dr. Elena Vasquez appeared beside Rodriguez on the transmission, now silver-haired but with the same intense eyes. Hello, council members. I hope you've been well during our absence. Dr. Vasquez, Counselor Zephyria said carefully. Your presence suggests this is not merely a social call. Perceptive as always, Dr. Vasquez replied. We've come to discuss a proposition that we believe will be mutually beneficial. Ambassador Sarah Chun, now showing her age but still commanding in presence, stepped into view. 25 years ago, you exiled humanity because you feared what we might become. Today, we're here to show you what we became, and to offer our assistance with problems you didn't know you had. Vextar's mandibles clicked aggressively. We require no assistance from exiles. Whatever you've built in the wasteland beyond our borders is your own business, but you are not welcome to return. Actually, said a new voice, younger and somehow different from the others, you need our help more than you realize. A young man stepped into view, Alex Chun, now in his 30s, with eyes that seemed to see beyond the visible spectrum. When he spoke, the translation systems had difficulty processing his words, as if he were using concepts that didn't exist in the galactic languages. I am Alex Chun, speaker for the new humanity. We have been monitoring your space for some time now, and we've detected problems that your current technology cannot solve. New humanity? Admiral Brasswind asked, his processors struggling to analyze the implications. Alex smiled, and the expression was both human and something else entirely. We are what happens when humans grow up without limits. 25 years ago, you feared our potential. You were right to fear it, but not for the reasons you imagined. The main display changed, showing a three-dimensional star map of Council space. But this map showed details that no Council sensor had ever detected: energy flows between systems, dimensional stress points, and what appeared to be massive structures hidden in the deep spaces between stars. Your galaxy is under attack, Alex said simply. Has been for approximately 8 years now. You don't know it because the attackers are using technologies and strategies your species can't perceive. The chamber erupted in shouting. Representatives demanded explanations, denials, proof. But their protests died away as the display zoomed in on specific regions of space, showing what appeared to be massive mechanical structures parasitically attached to stars, slowly draining their energy. Tidesinger Merrill was the first to find her voice. What are those things? The Devourers, Alex replied. A machine intelligence from a distant galaxy. They consume entire civilizations, but they do it slowly, invisibly, so their victims never realize what's happening until it's too late. Dr. Vasquez stepped forward. We first detected their presence 7 years ago, when our deep space monitoring stations picked up energy signature anomalies in your regions. We've been tracking their progress ever since. Why didn't you warn us? Counselor Zephyria asked, her crystalline form flickering with agitation. Would you have listened? Sarachin asked pointedly. Would you have believed warnings from the dangerous humans you exiled for being too unpredictable? The uncomfortable silence that followed answered the question completely. Admiral Rodriguez activated another display, showing detailed schematics of the parasitic structures. The Devourers are using quantum phase manipulation to exist slightly outside your normal space-time. That's why your sensors can't detect them directly. They're literally in a different dimensional layer. How do you detect them? Admiral Brasswind asked, his logical mind already working on the implications. We think differently now, Alex said simply. Growing up in deep space, without the gravitational constraints that shaped planet-bound thinking, gave us new perspectives on the nature of reality itself. We developed technologies based on these new ways of thinking. The ethereal representative pulsed with rapid questions. What kind of technologies? For starters, faster-than-light travel that doesn't rely on folding space-time, Dr. Vasquez explained. We discovered how to step sideways through dimensions instead of forcing our way through existing space. Impossible, Counselor Thane hissed. The energy requirements alone would be impossible using your energy sources, Alex interrupted. But we're not using conventional energy anymore. We're drawing power from the quantum foam itself, the space between spaces. Sarah Chun took control of the conversation again. We're not here to impress you with our technological advances. We're here because the Devourer threat is real, immediate, and beyond your current capability to address. And you can address it? Vextar asked skeptically. We already are, Rodriguez replied. Our fleets have been engaging Devourer scouts for 6 months now. So far, we've prevented them from establishing major footholds in 3-star systems at the edge of your territory. The display changed again, showing recordings of space battles unlike anything the Council had ever seen. Human ships moved through space in impossible ways, phasing in and out of normal reality, striking at enemies that appeared as distortions in space itself. The Devourers adapt quickly to conventional tactics, Alex explained. But they're having trouble understanding our approach because we don't think like other organic species. Our strategies are based on quantum uncertainty principles rather than linear military doctrine, Dr. Vasquez added. More importantly, we've learned how to disrupt their dimensional phasing technology. We can force them back into normal space where they're vulnerable to conventional weapons. Assuming, said Admiral Brasswind, that we believe any of this, what exactly are you proposing? Sarah Chun smiled grimly. A temporary alliance. We help you defend against the Devourers, and, in exchange, you provide us with certain resources and allow us limited access to council space for coordination purposes. Limited access. Vextar's tone was sharp with suspicion. We don't want to return to council space permanently, Alex said, and his words carried a strange certainty. What we've built in the frontier is better than what we left behind. But we need access to your manufacturing facilities and raw materials if we're going to build enough ships to defend all of council territory. The chamber fell silent as the representatives absorbed the magnitude of what was being proposed. The humans they had exiled as too dangerous were offering to save them from a threat they hadn't even known existed. Counselor Zephyria was the first to speak. How do we know this isn't some elaborate deception? How do we know you're not the threat yourselves? Because, Alex said with that strange smile, if we wanted to conquer you, we would have done it already. Our capabilities are far beyond what your military could resist. We're here offering partnership because we believe in something you never understood about humanity, which is, we don't want to rule others, Sarachin said firmly. We never did. We want to explore, to grow, to become more than we were. Conquering you would be a step backwards, not forwards. Admiral Rodriguez activated one final display, showing the projected path of the Devourer advance. You have approximately 18 months before their main force reaches the core systems of Council space. With our help, you can survive and drive them off. Without our help, he shrugged. Well, you'll find out what it feels like to be consumed by a force you can't understand or fight. The transmission ended, leaving the council chamber in stunned silence. Outside, through the crystal dome, the stars looked different somehow, less friendly, more dangerous. Vextar finally spoke. We need time to consider this proposal. Of course, came Alex's voice, though the main display remained dark. We'll be waiting at the edge of your space. But don't take too long. The Devourers won't wait for you to make up your minds. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, each lost in their own thoughts, none of them noticed the small device that materialized briefly on the central platform before vanishing again. The humans had already demonstrated that the Council's most secure facility was no barrier to their new technologies. In the weeks that followed, Council intelligence agencies worked frantically to verify the humans' claims. Deep space sensor arrays were recalibrated, long-range scouts were dispatched, and xenoarchaeologists were consulted about legends of ancient machine intelligences. The evidence was overwhelming and terrifying. The Devourers were real, they were advancing, and the Council's military forces were completely unprepared for the kind of warfare that would be required to stop them. But accepting human help meant acknowledging that the exile had been not just a mistake, but a catastrophic failure of judgment. It meant admitting that the very qualities that had made humans seem dangerous were exactly what the galaxy needed to survive. High Chancellor Vextar stood alone in his private chambers, looking out at the stars, and wondering if pride was worth the extinction of everything his people had built. The choice was simple, even if it was impossible to accept: swallow their pride and beg the humans for help, or watch their civilization be devoured by machines from beyond the void. The irony was not lost on him. They had exiled humanity to preserve their way of life. Now they needed humanity to preserve their very existence. Meanwhile, at the edge of Council space, the human fleet waited with patience that spoke of absolute confidence in their abilities. They had become something new in the galaxy, something unprecedented and powerful. The Council had tried to prevent this transformation by removing them from civilized space. Instead, they had given humanity the freedom to evolve beyond anyone's imagination. The question now was whether the galaxy would be wise enough to accept their help or proud enough to face extinction alone. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had lasted for 3 days. Representatives argued, debated, and raged at each other while the Devourer threat grew closer with each passing hour. Outside the crystal chamber, long-range sensors confirmed everything the humans had warned them about. Massive mechanical entities were indeed approaching Council space, hidden in dimensions that conventional technology couldn't perceive. High Chancellor Vextar called for silence as the final vote was tallied. His ancient mandibles clicked with reluctance as he read the results. By a margin of 7-5, the Galactic Council agrees to accept human assistance in defending against the Devourer threat. The dissenting representatives, primarily the Mechanical Confederacy, the Silicon Brotherhood, and Three smaller species voiced their protests immediately. Admiral Brasswin's mechanical voice carried deep disapproval. This decision will be remembered as the day we surrendered our independence to the very species we wisely exiled. Counselor Zephyria, whose crystalline collective had voted in favor of the alliance, flickered with nervous energy. Independence means nothing if we're all dead. The humans offer our only chance of survival. Within hours of the vote, human ships began appearing throughout Council space. Not the crude, bulky vessels that had carried humanity into exile, but sleek, organic-looking craft that seemed to flow through space rather than push through it. They moved in formations that defied conventional military doctrine, appearing and disappearing at will. Admiral Rodriguez materialized in the council chamber through what appeared to be a controlled teleportation system. The technology shouldn't have been possible, yet there he stood, slightly translucent for a moment before solidifying completely. "Thank you for making the right choice," he said without preamble. "We've already begun deploying defensive grids around your core systems. Dr. Vasquez has teams working with your scientists to upgrade your sensor networks so you can actually see what we're fighting." Vextar struggled to maintain his composure. "What exactly do you need from us?" "Raw materials, manufacturing capacity, and trust," Rodriguez replied. "We can provide the designs and the tactical knowledge, but we need your industrial base to produce enough equipment to defend such a vast territory." Dr. Vasquez appeared beside Rodriguez, using the same impossible teleportation technology. Now in her 70s, she carried herself with the confidence of someone who had helped reshape the fundamental laws of physics. "We're sharing our dimensional sensor technology with your scientists," she announced. "Within a week, you'll be able to see the Devourers as clearly as we do. I should warn you, the view isn't pleasant." She activated a holographic display that filled the chamber with a three-dimensional map of council space. But this wasn't the clean, ordered territory the representatives knew. This map showed parasitic growths attached to dozens of star systems, massive mechanical entities feeding on stellar energy while remaining invisible to normal observation. Tidesinger Merrill's bubbling voice carried horror. "They're everywhere. How long have they been feeding on our stars?" "Approximately 8 years," Alex Chen's voice answered as he materialized in the chamber. Now clearly the leader among the humans, he carried himself with an authority that seemed to bend reality around him. "They've been very careful, taking only small amounts of energy from each system. But that's about to change." The display shifted, showing projected timelines. In 6 months, they'll begin the harvest phase. Instead of subtle energy drain, they'll start consuming entire stars within days. Your current population will have less than a year to evacuate before their home systems become uninhabitable. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions, demands, and accusations. Alex waited patiently for the noise to die down before continuing. "The good news is that we can stop them. The bad news is that the process of stopping them is going to change your galaxy forever." "Change it how?" Counselor Thane asked, his reptilian instincts warning him of danger. "The technology needed to fight the Devourers requires a fundamental shift in how you think about physics, space, and time," Dr. Vasquez explained. "We can't just hand you advanced weapons and expect them to work. Your entire scientific paradigm needs to evolve." Sarah Chun, now clearly an elder stateswoman among humanity, stepped forward. "We're offering to share 25 years of technological advancement with you in a matter of months. But understand that this knowledge will transform your civilizations as much as it transformed ours." "We don't have a choice," Vextar said bitterly. "Do we?" "No," Alex replied with simple honesty. "But you should understand that what we're offering isn't just survival. It's evolution into something greater than any of our species have been before." The transformation began immediately. Human technical teams appeared on every major council world, working alongside local scientists to install new sensor arrays, manufacturing equipment, and defensive systems. The technology they brought seemed to violate known laws of physics at every turn. Dr. Kethera, the Threnodai Empire's chief scientist, worked closely with a human team led by Dr. Michael Chun. After 3 days of intensive briefings, she was beginning to understand just how far humanity had advanced. "Your quantum foam generators," she buzzed in excitement. they're not just providing power. They're actually creating micro-universes and harvesting their entire energy output before they collapse. Dr. Chen nodded approvingly. You're grasping the concept faster than we expected. Most planet-based species have trouble thinking in terms of temporal energy loops. But the ethical implications, Dr. Kethera continued, her mandibles clicking with worry, you're creating and destroying entire realities for power generation. Micro-realities that last for nanoseconds and contain no conscious life, Dr. Chen corrected. We're very careful about the consciousness issue. One of our fundamental principles is that evolution should enhance life, not consume it. Similar conversations were happening across council space as alien scientists struggled to understand technologies that seemed to rewrite the fundamental rules of existence. The humans were patient teachers, but they made it clear that time was running out. On the Crystalline Collective's homeworld, Counselor Zephyria worked with Dr. Vasquez to adapt human biotechnology for non-organic species. Your medical advances assume carbon-based life, Zephyria noted, her crystalline form resonating with concern. How do we apply healing technologies to silicon-based beings? We don't, Dr. Vasquez replied. We develop new approaches based on your unique biology. Watch this. She activated a device that looked like it had been grown rather than built. The device scanned Zephyria's crystalline structure and projected a holographic blueprint of her molecular composition. But the blueprint was dynamic, showing how the crystal matrix could be reinforced, enhanced, and even modified. Your people think of yourselves as static beings, Dr. Vasquez explained. But you're not. You're constantly growing, constantly changing your structure in response to your environment. We can accelerate and direct that growth. Zephyria stared at the hologram in amazement. You're suggesting we can consciously evolve our physical forms. All conscious beings can, Dr. Vasquez said simply. The only question is whether they choose to embrace that evolution or resist it. While the technological integration proceeded at breakneck speed, the first signs of devourer response began to appear. Human monitoring stations detected massive energy buildups in the dimensional spaces where the mechanical entities hid. Alex Chen called an emergency briefing for all Council military commanders. The meeting took place simultaneously on dozens of worlds through humanity's new communication networks, another technology that seemed to ignore the normal limitations of space and time. The Devourers have noticed our activities, Alex announced to the assembled alien officers. They're accelerating their timeline. Instead of 6 months, we now have approximately 8 weeks before they begin the harvest phase. General Stactor of the Reptilian Hegemony hissed his frustration. How can machines change their strategy so quickly? Don't they operate on programmed instructions? They're not just machines, Alex replied. They're a hybrid intelligence, part artificial, part absorbed organic consciousness from the civilizations they've consumed. They learn and adapt from every species they've encountered. Admiral Brasswin's robotic form processed this information with visible effort. How many civilizations have they consumed? Based on our analysis of their technology signatures, at least 47 different species across 3 galaxies, Dr. Vasquez answered. Each conquest adds to their collective intelligence and capabilities. The weight of this revelation settled over the assembled commanders like a physical force. They were facing an enemy that had successfully destroyed dozens of other galactic civilizations. However, Alex continued, they've never faced anything like what we've become. Every previous civilization they encountered was bound by the same basic physical and conceptual limitations. We're not. The first major battle occurred 3 weeks later, in a star system at the edge of Council space. The Devourers had decided to test the new defenses by accelerating their harvest of a relatively unimportant system. They emerged from their dimensional hiding places in massive numbers, their mechanical forms bristling with weapons that could tear apart planets. Admiral Rodriguez commanded the defense from the human flagship Transcendence, a vessel that looked more like a living creature than a traditional warship. Beside him stood General Stactor and Admiral Brasswind, both struggling to understand the tactical displays that showed the battle in dimensions their species couldn't naturally perceive. Devourer fleet emerging from phase space, reported the human tactical officer. a young woman whose eyes seemed to track movements in multiple dimensions simultaneously, counting approximately 200 units, ranging from escort class to dreadnought equivalents. Begin dimensional anchoring, Rodriguez ordered. Force them into normal space where our allies can engage them effectively. The human ships moved in patterns that defied conventional physics, surrounding the emerging devourers with what appeared to be streams of pure energy. As these energy fields made contact with the mechanical entities, the aliens hiding in dimensional space were suddenly pulled into normal reality, becoming visible to Council sensors for the first time. General Stacktor stared at the tactical display in horror. The devourers were massive, clearly artificial, but with organic components grafted onto their mechanical forms, trophies from their previous conquests. Each ship was unique, a hybrid of technologies from dozens of different civilizations. Ugly, aren't they? Rodriguez commented. But effective. They've had a lot of practice. The battle that followed was unlike anything in recorded galactic history. Council ships, upgraded with human technology, fought alongside human vessels that moved through space like living things. The Devourers fought back with weapons that could distort time and space, but the humans had prepared their allies for such tactics. Energy torpedo incoming, the tactical officer announced calmly. It's trying to age our hull to dust. Temporal shields up, Rodriguez responded. Return fire with quantum disruptors. The human weapons didn't just destroy the Devourer's ships, they unraveled them, causing the stolen technologies to separate and drift away as their mechanical hosts were reduced to their component atoms. But the real surprise came when the Council ships began demonstrating their own new capabilities. Admiral Brasswin's vessel suddenly shifted into a higher dimensional state, allowing it to attack the Devourers from an angle they couldn't defend against. Impressive, Alex Chin's voice came through the communication system. You're learning faster than we expected. The battle ended with complete victory for the Allied forces, but the cost was sobering. Even with their new technologies, 3 Council ships had been lost, and several others had been damaged by weapons that conventional shields couldn't stop. This was just a probing attack, Rodriguez explained to the gathered commanders after the battle. The real assault will involve thousands of ships, not hundreds. The news was both encouraging and terrifying. They could fight the Devourers, but the enemy's true strength was still unknown. Over the following weeks, similar battles erupted across the frontier as the Devourers tested different approaches to breaking through the new defenses. Each engagement provided valuable intelligence about enemy capabilities, but it also revealed the enormous scope of what they were facing. The breakthrough came when Dr. Chin's research teams, working with scientists from all Council species, discovered something unexpected in the wreckage of destroyed Devourer ships. They're not just collecting technology, Dr. Chin announced in an emergency briefing. They're collecting consciousness itself. Each ship contains the preserved mental patterns of beings from the civilizations they've conquered. Dr. Vasquez nodded grimly. The absorbed consciousnesses are being used as biological computers, providing the creativity and intuition that pure artificial intelligence lacks. Can we free them? Tide Singer Merrill asked, her bubbling voice heavy with sympathy. We think so, Alex replied. But that's not the important discovery. The important thing is that we now know their ultimate goal isn't just to harvest energy and technology. They're trying to absorb every form of consciousness in the universe. The implications were staggering. The Devourers weren't just an invading force. They were trying to become a single, universal consciousness that encompassed all life in existence. Which means, Sarah Chun added quietly, that running away or hiding isn't an option for anyone. Eventually, they'll find every populated galaxy, every inhabited world, every thinking being. This isn't just about defending Council space. This is about the survival of consciousness itself. The final phase of the war began when human deep space monitors detected the main Devourer fleet approaching from intergalactic space. The enemy force was beyond anything they had imagined. Millions of ships in configurations that spanned multiple galaxies. How do we fight something that size? Vextar asked during the emergency council session. We don't fight it, Alex replied calmly. We evolve past it. The plan that humanity revealed in those final weeks was audacious beyond anything the galaxy had ever attempted. Using technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible, they proposed to transform the entire galactic civilization into something the Devourers couldn't absorb or understand. Consciousness elevation, Dr. Vasquez explained to the assembled representatives. We help every thinking being in the galaxy evolve beyond their current limitations. Not just technologically, but conceptually. What does that mean exactly? Counselor Thane asked suspiciously. It means, Alex said with a smile that seemed to encompass infinite possibilities, that we become something new. Something that exists beyond the physical limitations the Devourers are designed to overcome. The process began immediately. Human teams worked with volunteers from every species, using technologies that could enhance consciousness itself. The results were remarkable and sometimes disturbing. Beings who underwent the process retained their essential identity, but gained capabilities that seemed miraculous. A Threnodai volunteer emerged from the consciousness enhancement chamber with the ability to perceive 17 different dimensions simultaneously. An Aquarian test subject discovered they could exist as both an individual and a collective consciousness at will. It's not mandatory, Sarah Chun assured the worried representatives. But those who choose to evolve will be able to survive what's coming. Those who don't. She didn't need to finish the sentence. The choice was evolution or extinction. As the Devourer fleet drew closer, more and more beings across Council space chose to undergo the consciousness enhancement process. Entire worlds were transformed as their populations evolved beyond the need for purely physical existence. The final battle never came in the way anyone expected. When the Devourer fleet arrived at the edge of the galaxy, they found not the collection of vulnerable civilizations they had expected to harvest, but something entirely new. The evolved beings of the galaxy, human, alien, and hybrid consciousnesses working in harmony, had become something the Devourer's absorption technology couldn't process. They existed partially outside normal space-time, their consciousness distributed across multiple dimensional layers. We tried to warn you. Alex Chen's voice reached across space to address the Devourer collective directly. Evolution is more powerful than consumption. Growth is stronger than absorption. The Devourer response was predictable, a massive assault using every weapon in their arsenal. But their weapons were designed to destroy or absorb physical and conventional digital consciousness. The evolved beings simply existed beyond the reach of such crude methods. The war ended not with a great battle, but with a transformation. One by one, the organic consciousnesses trapped within the Devourer ships began to break free, their awareness elevated by contact with the evolved galactic civilization. The machines that had enslaved them for millennia found themselves suddenly empty, their controlling intelligences liberated into something greater. In the end, the Devourers themselves chose evolution over extinction, their artificial intelligences merging with the growing galactic consciousness not as conquerors, but as students learning what they had never understood. That true power comes not from consuming others, but from helping them become more than they were. The galaxy that emerged from the crisis bore little resemblance to the rigid, hierarchical civilization that had exiled humanity decades earlier. Species boundaries became fluid as beings chose their own forms and capabilities. The old council chamber was replaced by a multidimensional space where representatives could exist simultaneously in dozens of different states of consciousness. High Chancellor Vextar, now evolved far beyond his original Threnodai form, spoke to the assembled beings during their first post-war gathering. We exiled humanity because we feared change. We thought stability required limiting growth. We were wrong about everything. Ambassador Sarah Chun, now existing as a consciousness that spanned several dimensional layers while maintaining her essential humanity, replied with gentle wisdom. You weren't wrong to be afraid. Change is frightening, especially rapid change. But you were wrong to think that preventing change would preserve what you valued. What do you mean? Asked the entity that had once been Counselor Zephyria, now a shifting pattern of crystalline thought. You wanted to preserve your civilizations, Alex Chin answered, his consciousness now distributed across time as well as space. But civilizations aren't buildings or governments or territories. civilizations are the growth and evolution of conscious beings. By trying to stop change, you were actually trying to stop civilization itself. The new galaxy they had built together was indeed stable, but it was the stability of a living system in constant growth and adaptation, not the rigid stability of a museum piece. Species still maintained their unique identities and cultures, but they also shared in a collective consciousness that allowed unprecedented cooperation and understanding. And, at the heart of it all, humanity continued to do what they had always done: push boundaries, ask uncomfortable questions, and insist that there was always something better just beyond the horizon. But now, instead of being feared for these traits, they were celebrated as the teachers and guides who had shown everyone what evolution could really mean. The universe was vast, and there were always new frontiers to explore, new forms of consciousness to discover, new ways to grow beyond the limitations that had once seemed absolute. The beings who had once called themselves the Galactic Council now called themselves something new, the Conscious Collective, and they faced the infinite possibilities ahead with excitement rather than fear. The exile that was meant to contain humanity's dangerous potential had instead unleashed it upon the universe. And the universe was better for it.